Tonight, the migrant workers asking, is it worth staying on? As a recession looms, many are already heading home.
We'll find out what that could mean for the region's economy.
Also on the programme, safe scooting, the problems that have prompted a county to issue a highway code for mobility buggies.
On the brink, the warheads were ready, but just how close did we come to being on the front line of a nuclear conflict?
And
because he's rather a tragic case.
Bond is back. Daniel Craig tells us about 007's mission to thrill and how he trained for one of the biggest stunts right here in Bedfordshire.
That's coming up, but first tonight, many moved here hoping for a prosperous new life abroad, but now migrant workers are being driven away because of Britain's rising cost of living.
Well, since the enlargement of the European Union in 2004, thousands of economic migrants have come to work here in our region.
But with Britain heading for recession and food and energy prices rising steeply, many are finding it's just too expensive to stay. Carl Heidel is in Peterborough for us tonight. Carl.
Yes, hello Caroline. Here along Lincoln Road in Peterborough, many nationalities stand side by side, whether it's a Polish delicatessen, a Portuguese restaurant or alternatively an Asian supermarket. For years, Peterborough and this region has attracted tens of thousands of migrant workers. In fact, we still have upwards of around about 200,000 still in the region, but there used to be more. But because the economic climate is now changing, many of those migrants are trying to decide whether to stay or whether to go. Susana Oliveira moved from Portugal 4 years ago. She opened a cafe in Peterborough and it's become a magnet for many different nationalities. But she says in the last few months she's noticed a change.
Because there is many people here, there is few work, so some people are going back.
And have you noticed more of that over the last couple of months?
Yes, definitely. Even the business, everyone is struggling, so the business is going down also.
It seems that problems in the UK economy are making economic migrants think twice about staying here. It used to be a place where unquestionably workers could earn better salaries and have a better standard of living than in their own countries, but not anymore. The Strug family moved here from Poland 3 years ago. They've got no intention of leaving, but know people who are heading home.
My neighbour is left 2 days ago. He's left to Poland because I think he thought that he will have a better life in there than in here now.
And that anecdotal evidence is backed by national statistics. Figures released earlier this year show around 1 million migrant workers have come to Britain since 2004. But it's believed about half of them have already left. Despite that, 199,000 foreign workers still live in the east of England, although the numbers arriving here are now falling. Anthony Davis works at Newlink, an organisation which helps foreigners find work and settle in Peterborough. He says people are heading back home, but equally Peterborough is still attracting new economic migrants.
Whilst the national picture seems to be that anecdotally people are returning to their home countries, here in Peterborough we're still seeing the same number of people arriving here, which is around about 5,000 a year in terms of national insurance registrations. That seems to be because of the proximity we are here to the Fens, where there are picking, packing and plucking jobs as they are known.
With the economy of Peterborough and the Fens relying so heavily on a ready supply of cheap labour, businesses will be hoping that the region isn't losing its appeal.
Now, Carl, how serious could it be for the region's economy if these migrant workers do go home?
Well, Stephen, it's very serious, or it could be very serious for our economy, because many of our region's jobs are filled by foreign workers, because the English workers aren't interested in doing those sort of jobs for a salary which is very close to the minimum wage. So far, though, there are still enough migrant workers coming into our region, but there are now more leaving. In fact, I spoke to a recruitment agency only this afternoon, and they said, compared to last year, 30% of their Polish workforce has left within the last 12 months, and they're not coming back.
Thank you, Carl.
Now, scientists in Norfolk have developed a strain of tomato that could help to prevent cancer.
The skin of the new purple tomato, cultivated at the John Innes Centre in Norwich, has strong antioxidant properties, but because it has been genetically modified, it may never make it into the shops. Stuart Lee's had more.
House at the John Innes Research Centre in Norwich, there's a new form of garden fruit that scientists here have pioneered. Growing alongside traditional tomatoes are a genetically modified purple variety that could help to prevent cancer.
Mice that are fed the supplement with the purple tomatoes live about 30% longer than the ones on the red tomatoes. So this shows that the purple tomatoes offer some protection against the progression of disease in this animal model.
These purple tomatoes are being grown here at the John Innes Centre in controlled conditions, and so I'm not actually allowed to eat them because it could lead to what scientists would call inadvertent environmental release, and they would have to keep me here to study me for the next 3 days. The secret of their possible health benefit is in the skin colour. Its unusual pigment is also an antioxidant, which could help prevent cancer. But of course, there are groups which strongly oppose genetically modified foods being sold in the UK.
The Green Party is against GM foods in principle because we're concerned about the risks to the environment, to farmers and to human health. But we think this latest development is simply unnecessary. There are lots of foods that contain antioxidants naturally, whether we're talking about beetroot, red grapes, different types of berries. If people take these things as part of their diet, that will undoubtedly bring a positive health effect. We don't need the GM tomatoes to bring that about.
Many people don't consume very large amounts of berries, a bit exotic or too expensive, or they just don't like them. But more people eat tomatoes, so perhaps we could offer them the benefits that they could get from berries through our tomatoes.
Extensive testing would be needed before the purple tomatoes could be sold in UK stores.
Evidence would have to be supplied to the regulatory authorities in Europe, and then they might take a long time, and they might even say no, you don't know what they're going to say. I think that's needlessly restrictive. There's no need to be like this. The Americans and others do not have such a restrictive regime, and they get on very well without any trouble.
I'm told purple tomatoes would taste the same as red ones, but if those opposed to GM foods can't be convinced, it's unlikely we'll soon be seeing purple tomatoes in soups or salads. Stuart Leiths, Anglia News, Norwich.
Of course, I was always told to eat my greens, but eating your purples doesn't quite sound the same, does it?
Now, a new version of the Highway Code is being published in Bedfordshire, not for car drivers, but for people who use mobility scooters and motorised wheelchairs.
Well, the latest figures show they've been involved in more than 1,000 accidents in a single year in the UK. And if the buggies aren't driven properly, they can be a danger both to the users and to pedestrians. Charlotte Fisher reports.
Power wheelchairs and motorised scooters are a lifeline for many older people and those with disabilities like Mick Dillon. An architect and chief executive of the Disability Resource Centre in Dunstable. He welcomes the new highway code, but says everyone needs to be more aware of what's going on around them, not just wheelchair users.
I think the booklet is really useful, but as a disabled person using a power chair all the time, it's an extension of me, it's my independence, and I don't have the choice and freedom everybody else has. I'll do my best, and people need to preempt me as much as I preempt them.
The code is intended to protect pedestrians, but also prevent the users turning the chairs over or having accidents on roads, which can be fatal. Users don't need insurance, but the code suggests third-party insurance is a good idea. On the pavement, the code reminds scooter users pedestrians have the right of way and that scooters must be limited to 4 miles an hour. On the road, only scooters which can do 8 miles per hour are allowed, and they must be fitted with headlights and a horn. If you take one onto a dual carriageway, which is allowed but not recommended, you have to fit an additional flashing amber light.
4 miles an hour hit by one of these in a shopping centre, it hurt you quite badly. But the thing is with them, I mean, 8 miles an hour they go out into traffic, they can get much more seriously injured. Because remember, you don't need a driving licence, tax or insurance to use one of these, and that's really a recipe for disaster.
If you're new to motorised wheelchairs, they do take a little bit of getting used to, particularly if you're going up and down curbs. And the expert advice is always try them out before you buy them. You can do that in your local disability resource centre. But is a highway code for wheelchair users patronising?
Normal people that are walking along, they don't always look where they're going.
Because they're on the phone?
Yeah, because they're on the phone, or they're sort of looking at the shop as they go and buy, and they've got the face facing this way, and they're just not looking, and it's us that has to swerve round them more than anything.
I went to go past one woman and she was over there, over there, over there, all along the path. Every time I went to go past her, she walks in front of me.
But the council insists this is an attempt to protect people using motorised wheelchairs as much as pedestrians. Charlotte Fisher, Anglia News, Bedford.
Well, some of the day's news in brief now. 2 babies being treated for E. coli at the Luton and Dunstable Hospital are said to be stable and fighting off the infection. They contracted the bug on the neonatal ward for other conditions. 2 premature babies have died since the outbreak was discovered in the unit on the 13th of October. Extra infection control measures remain in place.
The government has approved plans to extend the world's largest offshore wind farm off the Wash. Energy firm Centrica wants to build 70 new turbines next to the existing 54 in its Lynn and Innerdowsing farms. If the scheme is approved, it would generate enough energy to power 170,000 homes. The government wants to produce 15% of electricity from renewable sources by 2020.
A pig has been slaughtered and stolen from a children's farm park at Thorney near Peterborough. The white sow was taken from Pigeons Farm early on Saturday morning. The owners heard someone in the yard about 6 o'clock. They think the pig was stabbed with a wooden spike before being dragged into a car on the A47.
How anybody could do something like this to really quite tame animals that are very trusting. You know, they've never seen any violence at all, and we're just absolutely horrified.
Fighter jets from the US Air Force will resume night flying from Lakenheath in Suffolk later this month. After a break of several months, the aircraft will return to nighttime operations at the end of October until the spring. Officials say the activity provides essential training for operations around the world.
Well, staying on that military theme in a moment, the secret role our region played in the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And a top-secret mission, rather more Hollywood style, to be James Bond's stunt double. Daniel Craig trained for one of the movie's big action sequences here in Bedfordshire, and it led to an interesting role for one of the instructors.
They have to glue the wig on, and at 180 mile an hour, 150 mile an hour, it's likely to get taken off his head, so let's use someone with hair, really.
And there's an update on the weather. If you think it was chilly today, get ready to wrap up. Even colder over the next few days, but still quite sunny, like here today at Kimbolton in Cambridgeshire, not far from Huntingdon. It's a little early taste of winter, and there may even be some sleetiness tomorrow. Anglia weather is coming up later in the programme.
Coming up on tonight's evening news, the BBC is forced to apologise for unacceptable and offensive comments by its highest paid star, Jonathan Ross, and the comedian Russell Brand.
And Bond is back, but the gadgets are not. Daniel Craig tells us why some of the traditional Bond gimmicks were banned. Join us for all the day's top stories at 6:30.
Now, today is the anniversary of what has a good claim to be the most dangerous day in human history, and this region was in the front line.
October the 27th, 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis was at its height, and military bases here were literally minutes away from unleashing nuclear war.
Well, that's the alarming central message in a new book by an author who's been talking to John Francis.
A corner of the old airfield at North Pickenham in West Norfolk makes an ideal go-kart track. It wasn't such a fun atmosphere when Frank Leatherdale was here before. This concrete column is almost all that remains of the nuclear missile battery he used to command. American Thor missiles arrived in the UK in 1958 and stayed 5 years. Under joint British and American command, they were targeted at the USSR.
It was a lot of pressure because it was a deterrent weapon, and if ever we had to fire it, then the deterrent had failed and you could be sure that there was something coming in the other way.
In October 1962, the Americans under John F. Kennedy blockaded Cuba against a convoy bringing Soviet nuclear missiles to be based there within easy reach of American targets. In a sense, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev was trying to achieve what the Americans had already achieved by basing missiles to threaten the USSR in Italy, Turkey, and Great Britain. East Anglia was in the front line of airborne delivery of nuclear weapons, with 5 main V-bomber bases in our region and an atomic bomb store at Barnham. The 60 Thor rockets were at 5 East Anglian sites and 15 more in Lincolnshire and Yorkshire. As the superpower standoff ratcheted up, British nuclear weapons and American weapons on British soil were brought to unprecedented states of readiness. Author Jim Wilson, former head of news at Anglia, says starkly these days were the most dangerous days in human history.
I think it came very close indeed. The V-bombers in bases in East Anglia and Lincolnshire were loaded with nuclear weapons. The crews were ready beside their aircraft, and for a period of time crews were actually in the cockpits at what's called 5 minutes from takeoff. The Thor's missiles in bases like this at North Pickenham were taken through the early part of their launch process. They were fueled. They were standing erect and within about 8 minutes of being fired.
Jim Wilson describes how the fledgling campaign for nuclear disarmament had staged demonstrations against the deployment of the Thor missiles. The government tried to keep it quiet, but Swaffham people were well aware.
I think it's such a terrible thing, this rocket, to think that such a thing should be so near this very peaceful town.
I can't see where they're going to protect us much, can you? Because if they dropped a bomb, we would all go in any case.
And during the crucial 2 days of the Cuban crisis, which Wilson's book chronicles almost hour by hour, what were the people told?
The public knew nothing, and I think the government felt that it was better that they knew nothing than that there should be public panic.
But RAF personnel were all too well aware that the weekend of October 27th and 28th, 1962, could so easily have seen East Anglia obliterated. One rocket technician describes coming back to his home here in North Pickenham when the crisis was over to discover his children playing with the new toys that they'd been bought for Christmas. His wife had decided to give them that enjoyment before they all died. That's how close we came. John Francis, Anglia News, North Pickenham.
Frightening, isn't it? Really is. Let's move on to the future now, though. Stonehenge, the Angel of the North, well, closer to home, has a new landmark unveiled this weekend. Corby and Peterborough is where the action was. Yes, the region's newest landmark was unveiled in Peterborough on Saturday. It's coming together at Hampton Nature Reserve, where, brick by locally made brick, they've been building a giant outline of a newt. Why a newt? Well, the old brick pit is home to the largest colony of great-crested newts in Europe.
It's a really interesting story, actually, because it's a Jurassic clay bed here. So we found all sorts of incredible weird fossils and things. And then it became a brick industry where they've dug out all these sort of gunnels, really, to extract the clay. And those areas then filled with water, which have become amazing sites, not just for great-crested newts, but some really rare plants as well.
So, to really put Hampton on the map, the volunteers who've made it say their new newt is big enough to be seen from space.
Now, Corby said bienvenue to its first ever French market at the weekend. It was a chance to savour some saucisson, perhaps pick up a patisserie and sample some typical gastronomic delights served up with Gallic flair.
It's lively and people come and buy some French things. They can't always go to France, so we bring France to their home.
And there are plans to have more continental and farmers' markets in future.
And finally, back to Peterborough to learn a few new moves. This is street dancing, and it exploded onto the stage at the Crescent Theatre in the first ever National Championships.
A load of young people competing in a competition that they're not intimidated and have fun and express themselves.
The judges were looking for attitude and originality, and they certainly found it. Oh, they were brilliant. brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
I fancy a go, but I think I'll get a
think you'd be
stitch,
quite
actually.
good, actually. I don't think I would.
No, I wouldn't. I promise you. OK, on to sport now. 6 non-league teams from our region have made it through to the draw for the first round of the FA Cup, some for the very first time. Stuart Gerald has been looking at the ties for us.
It's the time when the amateurs join in with our professional clubs from Leagues 1 and 2, all seeking glory and the chance to make a bit of money as well. 2 of the part-timers were rewarded with home ties when the draw was made live on ITV1.
Harlow Town, 29. To play Macclesfield Town. Kettering Town, the Poppies,
27.
Against Lincoln City.
Kettering, leaders of the Blue Square Premier League, made it through after knocking out Burton Albion, who are 6th in the table. 3 second-half goals from Gareth Seddon, John Dempster and Alfie Potter earned them the home tie against League 2 Lincoln City.
We didn't get the ball wide enough to start with, but once we did, we caused them a few problems, and Alfie's scored a cracking goal at the end, and he's starting to show what he's all about.
4 of our non-league sides have away ties. Brackley in the first round for the first time are at Wrexham or Eastwood, Cambridge United at Kidderminster, Bury Town at Alfreton, who are 2 leagues above them, and if Stevenage Borough should win their replay, they'll go to League 1 Leicester.
24. That is Leeds United out at last.
33. 3-3.
Against Northampton Town.
Northampton with an all-League 1 tie against the former Cup winners Leeds, Peterborough away to non-league Hornchurch, MK Dons home to League 2 Bradford City, and Luton home to non-league opposition, either Newcastle Blue Star or Altrincham. Those ties on the weekend after next, Saturday November the 8th or Sunday the 9th.
We look forward to those, and there are highlights from that Kettering game on ITV Local. So if you'd like to take a look, just go to itvlocal.com/Anglia, and you'll also find more FA Cup news and extended interviews and action highlights.
Well, it was a winning weekend for almost all of our league clubs, plenty of goals, and the odd bit of controversy too. Stuart has the highlights now.
Former MK Dons manager Martin Allen was warmly embraced by his old chairman Pete Winkelman. But the team he's currently managing, Cheltenham, were on the receiving end of a 3-1 defeat. The man who did most of the damage, Canadian international Ali Gerber, with 2 goals.
You have to be opportunistic. You have to follow the ball, the rebound, and you never know. You can hand up on your foot and you just have to put it behind the net.
Don's goalkeeper Willie Gure faces a 3-match ban after being sent off for violent conduct.
It looked like a definite sending off, I must admit myself. According to Will, he's adamant that it wasn't a sending off. He was jumping almost out of the way, and he wants to go and see the referee with the video evidence, and we'll see how it pans out from there.
Aaron McLean's first start in 7 weeks after injury kicked off Peterborough's humiliation of Huddersfield. He also scored the final goal in an emphatic 4-0 win.
It's always nice to score, and obviously I've had to sit there and watch all the other lads get all the glory, so it's just nice to be back out there and get a couple of goals.
Northampton tried hard but couldn't score at 3rd in the table Leicester. It was a good point though from a goalless draw. Luton have a win to celebrate after 7 games without one. Goals from Tom Craddock and Ian Roper in a 2-1 victory at Bury. 2 goals of high quality from Republic of Ireland international Owen Garvin paved the way for Ipswich to win at Plymouth 3-1. Leroy Leiter hit his 4th goal in 2 games for Norwich to help beat Doncaster 2-1. No wonder Norwich are trying to extend his loan spell from Reading. Stuart Gerald, Anglia News.
Well, in rugby yesterday, defeat for Northampton Saints in the EDF Energy Cup competition. They lost at Saracens by 33 points to 19. And in National League 1 yesterday, Bedford slipped to 4th after losing 15-7 at Nottingham, who now move above the Blues into 3rd place in the table.
Now there are just 4 days to go until James Bond returns to the big screen for Quantum of Solace. And 007 himself, Daniel Craig, has told us at Anglia News how he learned to do some of his most daring stunts right here in our region.
Dramatic skydiving scenes were actually filmed at an indoor skydiving centre near Bedford. And for one lucky instructor, it was the once-in-a-lifetime chance to be James Bond's body double. Neil Bradford reports.
wanted you to get rid of him. When you can't tell your friends from your enemies, it's time to go.
Right now, it promises double the action and is being billed as the darkest Bond film yet. According to one critic, Quantum of Solace is a bruising thriller which leaves you both drained and exhilarated. The action rips across Austria, Italy and South America, but one stunt involving a skydive was filmed a bit closer to home here in Bedfordshire.
We came to shoot it and we weren't sure how we were going to shoot it because you can fake it and you can go and shoot real skydiving, but someone came up with this idea. I think Gary Powell did, in fact, come up with the idea of this 200-mile-an-hour vertical wind tunnel, and it was, we don't look pretty, but it looks like it's real.
Was it fun?
It was a lot of fun.
The Bond team spent a total of 3 days here at Clapham in Bedfordshire, transforming this wind tunnel into a computer-generated sky, all for a 20-second scene in the film. And for one of the lucky instructors, wardrobe issues with Daniel Craig's usual body double meant he got the job instead.
I believe it was to do with the wig. Obviously, they have to glue the wig on, and at 180 mile an hour, 150 mile an hour, it's likely to get taken off his head. So they had to use someone with hair, really.
I do bits of some incredible stunts. It's me at times, and then at the really, really crucial moments, it's somebody who can really do it.
Daniel Craig and his Bond girl co-star Olga Kurylenko underwent weeks of training, supervised by Jay and the team at Bodyflight.
He was a good flyer. He picked it quite quickly. He was quite natural. He seemed nice and relaxed when he was flying. He seemed to enjoy it, and as I said, he picked it up pretty quickly.
I absolutely loved it. I got so addicted to that thing. It was impossible to get me out of the tunnel. I mean, I wish I had a little bit of time while I'm in London to go, but there's no way. I mean, not this time, but I definitely want to go back.
This is the second consecutive Bond film to shoot on location in Bedfordshire. The Aston Martin car crash scenes for Casino Royale were shot at Millbrook Proving Ground. For Jay Richardson, his small role in the latest Bond blockbuster was a dream come true.
Yeah, as a lad, I've always dreamed of being a character like James Bond, and trying to get into one of the films. Having the opportunity to do it was a once-in-a-lifetime achievement.
But presumably you would have preferred to be in a bedroom scene as Bond.
Well, anybody would looking at the Bond girls these days. They're such beautiful women. But I was quite happy with the scene that I actually did as well.
Quantum of Solace is on at cinemas across the region from Friday. Neil Bradford, Anglia News.
I think that's something to boast about, don't you?
Yeah. What was the sling going on, I want to know?
I hope it didn't do that in the wind tunnel. Anyway, let's catch up with our own Mr. Cool. David Hughes has the weather for us.
Secure online banking from Norwich and Peterborough. Sponsors of Anglia Weather.
Hello there, sunny but chilly at the moment. That weather will continue into tomorrow, although tomorrow afternoon some showers coming along, and some of them may just have a wintry flavour about them. Temperatures are taking a dive too. 2 or 3 last night. We've got the cold air flooding down from the north. -3 tomorrow night. That would be the coldest October night for about 5 years. Through the day today we had plenty of sunshine, and that will be the picture tomorrow morning, more sunshine. But also through the day we had some showers creeping in from the west, came into the region, and that will be the story for tomorrow, except the showers could be a little bit more widespread, and they may also have a bit of sleet mixed in, particularly on the higher ground. Tonight the showers will die out, becoming largely clear and dry, temperatures dipping close to freezing, so a widespread frost and some ice to scrape off the windscreens in the morning, but it will be a lovely sunny morning across much of the region. Into the afternoon, more cloud coming in from the west, may just be a little bit of wintry mix in there, a bit of sleet, but it's mainly rain that'll cross the region during the evening, but a very cold day tomorrow, 8 degrees at best. Then tomorrow night we get those showers clearing out of the way. Temperatures, once they clear, will dive down to -2 or -3 degrees, so icy patches are possible. Wednesday, back to the sunshine, but still very chilly. And then for the rest of the week, well, a little bit unsettled. More showers around on Thursday, more general drizzle on Friday, back to the showers on Saturday, but generally cold throughout. Bye-bye for now.
Online banking from the experts at Norwich and Peterborough.
Wrap up warm tomorrow. That's it from us. Now the national news with Mark and Mary. Good night.
Good night.
Crude radio rant by Russell Brand and Jonathan Ross that's provoked more than 1,500 complaints. The target was Andrew Sachs, the Fawlty Towers star, and his granddaughter. Tonight, we're sorry. The BBC, Ross and Brand are forced to apologise. But is it enough? The highly paid stars left several abusive messages on Andrew Sachs's answer phone, mocking him and his granddaughter. The prank has been described as puerile and offensive.
Also on the programme, the end of prudence. Gordon Brown will have to break his golden rule to try to end the financial crisis. It was a mistake. George Osborne admits he was wrong to meet a Russian billionaire in Corfu.
3, 2, 1, action!
And why the new Bond film is a little different from the ones before. No girls and no gadgets.
In this movie, it wasn't about, if you just put them in, they look awkward. They look like they're there for a gag.
Good evening. The BBC has been forced to apologise tonight after its highest-paid presenter was involved in a crude prank that's led to more than 1,500 complaints. On a Radio 2 show, Jonathan Ross, who's said to earn £6 million a year, and comedian Russell Brand left abusive messages on an answer phone belonging to Andrew Sachs, who played Manuel in Fawlty Towers. In it, Brand claimed he had had sex with the 78-year-old actor's granddaughter. Today, the BBC described it as unacceptable and offensive behaviour. And a warning, Geraint Vincent's report contains language some viewers may find upsetting.
I'd like to apologise for these terrible attacks, Andrew Sachs.
Two of the biggest names in entertainment squeezed into a little radio studio last weekend, and they got carried away with their own not very funny joke. Russell Brand is a comedian who derives plenty of material from his sex life.